Welcome to CivilNet. My guest via Skype from Ankara is political scientist and columnist Professor Baskin Oran. Professor Oran, thank you for joining us. Professor Oran, you had recently written an article that was published in Agos called Davutoglu versus Davutoglu. And you talk about his time as Foreign Affairs Minister of Turkey and how up until about 2011, his implementation of that policy was really quite positive for the country, and then things started to unravel. Could you explain to us, if you will, please, what changed? I mean, is it normal that he put forth a specific foreign policy, in other words, zero problems with neighbors, and he wrote a book called Strategic Depth that, if I'm not mistaken, was reprinted 91 times in Turkey. But in practice, he implemented something completely different. Explain to us, if you will, how that was possible.
Let's refresh our memories first. The book Strategic was written at the end of 1990s and published in 2001. Zero problem principle was developed in the next decade by Davutoglu. Therefore, the book was written right after the Cold War and zero problem much later. To comment on the book, it was written to encourage the developing Anatolian green capital, that is to say, the infrastructure of AKP. Its aim was to offer a glorious Ottoman past so that this class could develop a successful future. In other words, it was a romantic boosting that this class needed. That's why it was reprinted 91 times, as say. Coming to zero problem principle, it was based on, Davutoglu's policy was based on three principles. One, proactive policy. Two, soft power. And three, zero problem with neighbors. When we come to explain those policies, the proactive policy was in open contrast with the previous Turkish foreign policy, which showed no interest in the Middle East, except, unfortunately, to threaten and denigrate the Arabs, or to implement the imperialist policy of the United States. You will remember the Baghdad Pact of 1955. Secondly, the soft power. Again, in contrast with the previous Turkish, the 80-year-old Turkish foreign policy, which always used threats and even hard power against the neighbors. And thirdly, the zero problem with neighbors. This principle was in total contrast with the previous policy, which was always in conflict with neighbors. Davutoglu tried to correct this previous policy toward neighbors, especially towards the Arab countries. And Arab masses adored this. Arab states as well, and Syria to start with. But after 2011, everything changed.
What changed? What happened in 2011 that changed all of that? Because, you know, in your article you were saying that today, apart from Georgia and Bulgaria, Turkey has problems with all of its neighbors. And what we saw was a warming of relations with the Middle Eastern countries, from Lebanon, even Syria, today those relations are almost completely decimated. So what changed in the policy or in the implementation of the policy?
Maria Titizian, let me first say what has changed, and then I will dwell on why it changed. First of all, I talked about the proactive policy. This was a very active policy. This very active policy, especially towards the Middle East, continued, but with hard power this time instead of soft power. This was a comeback to the previous policy of Turkish Republic. Of course, for the Arab neighbors, this was worse than the previous Turkish policy, especially against Assad of Syria and General Sisi of Egypt. And of course, this new policy after 2011 created a great reaction among Arabs. Now, to come to the crucial question, what was the reason for this drastic change? I can find two answers to this. The first answer is Erdogan's psychology. Assad followed what Erdogan and Davutoglu said until the beginning of the Arab Spring. And of course, Erdogan and Davutoglu were very happy and friendly towards it. But Assad started to listen to Erdogan and Davutoglu no more because he was threatened by the Arab Spring, that is to say, the Muslim Brothers. And as Erdogan's megalomania doesn't take no for an answer, Erdogan was very furious and concentrated on overthrowing Assad. Secondly, and much more importantly, Assad stood in the way of the Muslim Brothers, and AKP is the Turkish branch of Muslim Brothers. AKP's position would be strengthened tremendously if the Muslim Brothers took power in Syria, Libya, Tunisia, and Egypt. But Assad, in Tunisia, we know that they are no more in power. Libya is in chaos. Sisi took power in Egypt, so overthrew the Muslim Brother regime, and Assad stood in the way of Muslim Brothers. This is what Erdogan did not forgive. Therefore, we can conclude that there are two Davutoglus. One Davutoglu under Gül. Remember that Gül started the good relations between Turkey and Armenia. This soccer visit, soccer diplomacy. And right after Gül, Davutoglu signed the two protocols with Armenia. That was a wonderful start between the two peoples and the two countries. This was one Davutoglu. The other Davutoglu, a totally different one, is a Davutoglu under Erdogan. One under Gül and the second one under Erdogan. They are totally different from each other. Therefore, to sum up, this policy ended in March 2001 because of the psychology of Erdogan. Assad doesn't listen to me no more. And secondly, Assad stood in the way of Muslim Brothers.
So basically the entire foreign policy of the country hinges on the personality of Erdogan, from what I understood from this conversation.
I wish what you said was true, because it's only half true. The whole life of Turkey, domestic politics and foreign policy, are under the two lips of Erdogan.
Well, Professor Baskin Oran, thank you so much. Thank you for writing these articles that help to enlighten us and to understand the policies of the government of Turkey, a very important neighbor for us, even though we don't have diplomatic relations as yet. We look forward to reading more and translating more here on CivilNet and talking with you.
Well, that's my pleasure, Maria Titizian. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to remind our viewers that my guest via Skype from Ankara was political scientist and columnist Professor Baskin Oran. Stay with CivilNet.